Welcome, everybody, to 60 Seconds of Stoicism, Stoic Shorts. We're not talking about the undergarments of Musonius Rufus. We are talking about a brief dive into Stoic history. This is where we'll actually talk about the Stoics themselves and some stories around them. We know their philosophy, but what makes them the people that were them, and we'll kind of give you a walk down history lane, if that makes sense. So, we decided tonight we're going to start off with the founder of Stoicism himself, Zeno of Citium. Or Citium, as some people say. So, what do you think makes purple dye?
I don't know. I have no idea.
Any idea? Modern purple dye, probably easy because it's a mixture of chemicals that we put together. But
Yes.
back in the time of the Stoics, where do you think purple dye came from?
Well, so colors had to come from, like, a mixture, like, probably plants and things that came from our earth. So, like, natural things. I don't know, rocks. I don't know.
Yeah, purple came from snail guts. So, there you go.
There you go.
It's kind of funny because, yes, Zeno of Citium was a seller merchant of purple. It was called Tyrian purple. And it was usually given to royalty or very rich people. And they actually used it from the mucus of a certain snail called the murex snail. It's found in the ocean, a sea snail. And they would use that to dye purple. Actually, later on, Marcus Aurelius would make a comment about it. It was like, what's my cloak other than just a piece of fabric with snail guts mixed into it? So that's kind of, a funny take on it. But Zeno of Citium was a wealthy merchant. And this is what he dealt with, was purple. So he decides that he's going to deliver some of this to another city across the Aegean Sea. He loads up all of his merchandise on this ship, and as he is out on the ocean, a terrible thing happens. He gets shipwrecked. His entire ship goes down. He loses all of his purple. It's kind of ironic that it comes from the sea snail and ends up back in the sea from whence it came. And so he is just destitute at this point. Thankfully, his life is spared. He washes up on the shores of Athens. And a wealthy merchant with nothing to his name now. It's like you're going from rich to poor in one day, and you're trying to figure out what to do with your life. So he did some wandering around. Looked into some different things, different jobs that were available. He looked into different schools of thought and was really trying to figure out what to do with his life. And so rumor has it that he consulted the Oracle of Delphi. So basically, the Oracle of Delphi was kind of a spiritual Google, if you will. You went to the Oracle to ask questions, and the Oracle would give you an answer that was supposed to help your life. Some of it say it was mysticism or fortune telling or soothsaying, all of that involved. But the Oracle did say one thing of value, and that was if you want to find happiness and completeness in life, you need to have conversations with the dead. Or some people say consult the dead.
Interesting.
Yeah, so that's what Zeno was supposed to do. Do you have any idea what would be your first thought if somebody said that to you? If you said, "What am I supposed to do?" and I said, "Melinda, if you want to know the happiness in life, you need to start talking to dead people." What would that mean to you?
Man, I'd really be confused.
Where would you go? Where would you go to talk to dead people?
So, I mean, I would go to the cemetery, I guess,
Right.
and just kind of look around. I don't know.
Yeah,
Start talking to the spirits around.
That's exactly, I think, what a lot of people would say. We're going to go to the cemetery and speak to them, or maybe say a prayer or something, where you're trying to speak. Anyways, Zeno wanders into a bookstore. And while he's in the bookstore, he picks up a book called The Memorabilia. Actually, I'm reading it right now. It's from a man named Xenophon. Xenophon was a soldier in the Athenian army. And Xenophon tells a story in his book about how he was walking down kind of a narrow, shadowy path in Athens, and a man stops him abruptly. And he says, "Excuse me, sir." He said, "Where can I go to buy fine goods?" And Xenophon tells the man, "Well, you're in Athens. You're right here on a coastal city. There's lots of beautiful things all around here. There's probably another place finer than Athens to find goods, so they're all around you." And he said, "Okay, well then let me ask you another question. Where can I go to become a good man?" And that really threw Xenophon off. And as he found out that this man asked him was none other than Socrates. And so he started a relationship with Socrates, where a student-teacher relationship. They actually served together. Socrates was quite a warrior. We always think of him as the greatest philosopher, but he was actually pretty good with a sword. And so they actually fought in a war together, Delium, and it was this big battle, and it was up against some allies of the Spartans, and the Athenians were losing, and they had to retreat. And Xenophon talks a couple times in the book about how Socrates picked him up and put him on his shoulders. A couple accounts of that. Socrates picked him up and put him on his shoulders when he fell off his horse and actually ran him to safety. And we're like, man, this guy we picture him in a robe, espousing all these amazing things on life, but actually was quite a warrior and pretty strong. There's even some writing in there about how he trudged through the snow in his bare feet. Like, this guy was tough. Socrates was very tough. So anyways, when Zeno reads this in this book Memorabilia, he's like, this is what I want to know about. I want to know about philosophy. I want to know about Socrates. So he's talking to the bookshop owner on this. And as he is doing that, along comes a man. His name was Creatus of Thebes. And he was a kind of the head of the school of Cynicism at the time. He was a Cynic. Cynics were different than Stoics. Stoicism hadn't been quite invented yet, but Cynics were very anti things. They didn't like they're anti-establishment. They thought everything had kind of an evil twinge to it, and it was better to put off all the cares and things of this world. And Zeno was like, actually, I like a lot of this, what you're saying, but it didn't quite resonate with him. So he studied under him, and he took a lot of those aspects in, but then started coming up with ones of his own and started realizing, I was given this opportunity where I was crashed on the shore. I had nothing. And now look at me, I'm studying philosophy. It's really not the things that happen to us, it's how we respond to them. And that basically becomes the logic for Stoicism. So Zeno ends up going on to start his own school. He becomes entrenched in philosophy. He becomes very good at it. He starts his school on what's called the Stoa Poikile, which is the painted porch. That's the translation to that. And because it's on the Stoa, it starts to be known as Stoicism. And that's where that comes from. So Zeno was the founder of that. What Zeno would go on to do is not only establish the school of Stoicism, but then as he left, other men would take over and put their stamp on it. We had Cleanthes, who he took over afterwards, and outside of a beautiful prayer that he wrote to their gods at the time, there's not a lot of his writings that exist. Cleanthes was a boxer that became a philosopher and took over the school. And then after that was Chrysippus, and Chrysippus had a lot of works that were written. Some of them are kind of hard to understand, and Epictetus kind of alludes to that in his own writings. Like, if you just don't think you're great because you can understand the writings of Chrysippus. So, but what he does is he establishes this long-running school. So it goes from about 300 BC all the way up through Marcus Aurelius, coming where's after. And then, of course, 2,000 years later, we're still talking about Stoicism. So in theory, it was a snail that ultimately led to the school of Stoicism being created. And, of course, I say that, tongue-in-cheek. It was a series of events for that.
Yeah.
I want to talk just for a quick second here in this short that there's a valuable lesson to be learned in this. We spend our lives, I think, especially in American culture, trying to obtain wealth. We do it from the time we're young. Some of us are lucky enough, I put that in quotes, to be born into it. Others try really hard. A lot of people lose their family in the process. They lose their relationships. They give up on things that would have otherwise brought them joy to try to chase the dollar. Scripture says that you cannot serve two gods. You cannot serve God and money at the same time. Well, the same thing was true for the Stoics. And Zeno realized that. Chasing the money down is not the focus of happiness. It's learning how to live with the bad things that come. It's learning how to take them and turn them into good. It's learning how to love but not be full of emotion to where it causes you to do bad things. It's learning how to protect yourself but not to take it to the point where you would harm others. It's learning how to build up that ataraxia inside that I know tomorrow could bring something horrible my way, but I am strong enough to take it on without it crushing me. And those are lessons that can be used no matter who you are. I don't care if you're a Stoic, atheist, Christian, karate master, I don't care what it is. Those can be used in your life. They're positive. And that came from a shipwreck. So when things happen in our lives that throw us off and we think, man, we are literally drowning like, literal for him, Zeno, drowning in the ocean and thankfully it being saved. But when those things start to pull us down, to start to drown us, we can say, what amazing thing is this going to turn into? What incredible turn of luck is going to come my way just beyond the horizon if I can get through this? And that's an amazing thing to have. So
it's kind of like the podcast we talked before. You were asking me the same question, what is something positive that can come out of something negative? What was the positive that could come out of getting into a car accident? So, and here's Zeno, man.
Yeah.
His world completely changed and changed the lives of others as well. Can
you imagine here he's probably bobbing in the ocean trying to save his life with this going down, but you're seeing everything.
Everything he worked so hard for. Just everything right before his eyes.
Just sink down to the bottom. Like it had to be crushing. Yeah, had to be crushing. But that's what he did. He took it and he turned it around and said, okay, this actually doesn't mean anything to my happiness. There's a lot of things internal that can make me happy, and so that's where we're at. All right, guys, so we're going to post a few more of these coming up on Tuesdays. We call them Stoic Shorts. We're just going to actually give some history behind the people that we talk about all the time. So if you're not an avid student of Stoicism or maybe just starting out, you can kind of know about them and their history and how they've contributed. And then, of course, we're going to have our regular podcast on every Saturday coming up. This Saturday is our podcast on dealing with death. So it is going to be a heavy one, but I hope you guys will tune in, and I hope it is something that's valuable for you and something maybe you can even share with others that might be either going through grief or maybe have some fear and anxiety of themselves of what's to come. We want to thank you guys for listening. As always, thank you for the support. We are actually getting a lot of listens now. We're getting a lot of subscribers. We do have a YouTube channel. It's called My Stoic 60. We're trying to grow that. You can even get the podcast on that right now, My Stoic 60. We don't have that many videos up. There's a few, but we're going to be putting up more very soon here. And we're also in the middle of the 100-day Stoic Challenge. So this is a health challenge that will last through until July 4th. And basically what we're doing is, we want to give a rundown really quick. We're doing 1,000 to 1,500 calories a day. That's your window, 1,000 to 1,500. No refined sugar. So, yes, natural sugar like honey are okay, as long as it's wild honey, because even some honey has refined sugar mixed into it for flavoring. Wild honey within limits, because I could eat about 25 honey sticks a day, so I try to limit it to one, just to have a little taste on it, just like Rufus said when he said he eats honey with his nuts and seeds. 3 days out of the week is a vegetarian diet, call it the Rufus diet. And then the rest of the days, you can eat what you want. You just, we learn to eat like a Stoic. We eat in moderation. We eat only what's necessary. And we make sure that we're not over greedy with our consumption. So, and then when it comes to exercise, we're doing 4 days of high-intensity interval training, which we did last night.
Yeah, that was a killer.
I forgot how much you're supposed to put your body on the ground when you do that. And I don't know why, but it seems like it's a longer way down to the floor now at 48 than it was when I was a young man. But we did it. We got through it.
We did.
Yeah. So 10 minutes of high-intensity interval training. What that is, for those of you who don't know, that is 2 minutes in exercise with a roughly 10 to 15 seconds break in between, but it is an all-out 2 minutes. It is going your hardest, your fastest, lifting the most you possibly can till fatigue, doing that, and then moving on to the next exercise after that 2 minutes. So, yeah. So we're doing high-intensity interval training, and then the other 3 days we're just going for walks, or just a general light exercise. And then to help us with our minds, of course, 10 minutes of reading, 10 minutes of journaling, and 10 minutes of meditation. So, yes. All right, that's it, guys. Thanks for listening to Stoic Shorts. We'll have another one next week. Next week, we are going to be doing Cleanthes. It's a short one next week. There's not a lot with Cleanthes, but he is a prominent person. He's the second teacher of the school of Stoicism, so we want to bring him in. And then we'll keep doing another one each week as we go. Thank you guys very much. We hope you'll tune in Saturday for our next podcast. If not, we'll see you next week. Thank you very much. And as always, Semper Studiosus.
Good night, guys.